Greetings everyone, I'm Hoodie Angel Brandon. You know, there's a lot of anime out there, and I have a hard time deciding which ones to watch. There's just so much of it with so many different genres that I inevitably get intimidated and just run back to something that I already know and am comfortable with. Well, recently I got the urge to watch something, and with no idea what I wanted to watch, I ended up returning to an old favorite, Yu Hakusho. So today we're going to take a look at it, I'm going to give my thoughts on it, and we're going to see just how well it's held up over the years. Background information. Yu Hakusho is a manga made by Yoshihiro Togashi, who also is doing Hunter x Hunter. It also received an anime adaptation, which is what we'll be looking at today. Apparently the name translates to Ghost Detective or something along those lines, which is close to the Ghost Files subtitle used for the series in its Western release. And yes, as a matter of fact, this is your daddy's anime. The manga was released in 1990 and ran till 1994, while the anime adaptation started in 1992 and ran until the end of 1994. That's right, it was airing in Japan when I was born, and wasn't even making its way here to the West till I was a tyke. In addition, there were several games based off the series, most of which were only available in Japan, but a few that I actually have. Maybe we can talk about them eventually. It even received a trading card game, though unfortunately I tossed my actually rather impressive collection a few years back. I actually have an important personal story for this one too. I used to watch this with my mom as a kid. It was one of my first introductions to anime, not counting the more kid-friendly stuff like Pokemon, Digimon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean anime as anime rather than those childish cartoons. I'd watch this on Toonami and Inuyasha on Adult Swim. Looking back, that's probably where my sleep problems began, staying up till 3 AM to watch anime and then have fun at school. It's no wonder I'm a mess, but that's okay, it was worth it. Elementary school was pointless anyway. Well, I guess I still don't know my multiplication tables, and if you ask me to label a map of the United States, it will look like this. But that's not the point. Let's get back to why we're here, to relive some spirit detective action. Story and characters. The story opens with local delinquent Yusuke Urameshi getting hit by a car to save a small child. Yup, 5 minutes in and our main character is dead. Step aside photo, we got a new champion. Naturally, it doesn't end there, as that would make for a rather unexciting experience. As Yusuke remembers how he ended up as a ghost floating over his corpse, another spirit, a woman named Botan, appears before him to take him to the spirit world, and also happens to reveal that Yusuke died before his time, and as such they haven't prepared a place for him yet. Consequently, the son of the ruler of the spirit world, Koenma, is willing to give Yusuke a trial which, should he succeed, will allow him to return to the realm of the living once more. Spoiler alert, the series does not end in 10 episodes and Yusuke succeeds. However, for bringing him back, Koenma enlists Yusuke as a spirit detective, having him investigate various supernatural phenomena in the living world, much to the young man's annoyance. As the plot evolves from chasing petty demon thieves to humans trafficking in demons to a high-stakes game for the fate of the three worlds, it also transitions away from the detective aspect to have more of an emphasis on fighting, because violence sells, I guess. Naturally, our main hero is everyone's favorite dimwit Yusuke, but being spirit detective is dangerous work, so he ends up rounding up some unexpected allies, from his detective assistant Botan and his boss Prince of the Spirit World Koenma to his crush Keiko and even his rival Kuwabara. This frickin' breadhead over here is actually a lot cooler than I gave him credit for as a kid. Yeah, he's a goof who's a bit slow, but he's got a super sweet and honorable side that really makes me respect him. And as the cases get tougher, he even makes some demon friends in the enigmatic and wise Kurama, and Hiei, a powerful swordsman and fire apparition, who looks down on his reluctant allies, preferring to act alone. Of the main cast, while I really like all of them, I always was and still am a Kurama fan. character interaction is so witty and good. It's probably my favorite part of the show, just how the various characters interact and play off each other. It's especially notable in the dub, between Kuwabara and Hiei. I can appreciate a lot more of the banter for what it is now, rather than just laughing because I know there was a vague joke at Kuwabara's expense. On that note, I was kinda surprised at some of the insults they threw out. It was a less PC time. There are also a lot of cool and memorable enemies, both big bads and more small-time foes. And even aside from the main cast of big bads, there are a lot of memorable and, more importantly, cute characters. Beyond the waifu and husbando, most of the non-background characters are memorable in some way, Sensui is still the original badass. Next, let's talk about how this show looks. Presentation. It's so late 80s, early 90s it hurts, and I love it. Though sometimes the angles and proportions look a bit good. Yeah, let's go with that. To be fair, that happens with most animations, but I mean, just look at that neck. Yellow Diamond would be proud. Looking a little off model there. You okay, Shizuru? Speaking of weird body proportions, there's some horrifying messed up stuff here. I mean, it's probably tame by today's standards, but I'd imagine this played a part in damaging my young psyche. This is some H.R. Geiger levels of messed up. I forgot just how many bright flashing lights the show has. Probably not enough to give a seizure, but it can get intense sometimes. Actually made my eyes hurt a little. And it could just be my untrained eye, but I think the show looks better in the later half, particularly the chapter Black arc. As a kid, I never realized how good the music was. Dang. Mostly because I was busy watching the fights, but still, some of it has this really weird quality to it I can't quite explain, but it always fits the mood really well. Chaotic, tense, and exciting for fights, and kinda touching and somber for the sadder scenes. And maybe it's because I grew up watching this dubbed, but it's a rare instance where I just flat out prefer the dubbed version. I tried to watch it subbed, and as soon as Kuwabara and Kurama opened their mouths, it just didn't sound right. Had to abort. As I mentioned earlier, the voice acting is so nostalgic, and they play off each other so well. With that in mind, the dub is far from perfect, it's just really what I prefer. Some of the background characters just aren't voiced very well. Ah well. Anyway, next let's look at some of my more general thoughts about the show. General thoughts. The startup is kinda slow. I'd say it really gets started at the 4 Saint Beasts, about 14 episodes in. With that said, I remember it being so much slower as a kid. If I had to guess, it's because I cared more about the fights, so all the talking bits just made it feel like it was dragging on, which isn't really the case. Despite following a number of shonen tropes, like a villainous rival who ends up joining the main team, our hero finding a wise mentor, and of course, tournament arcs, it has a number of times where it subverts your expectations. Naturally, it wouldn't be an action-packed shonen anime without a ton of awesome moves. These range from Yusuke's trademark Spirit Gun and Kuwabara's Spirit Sword to the awesome Dragon of the Darkness Flame or Tornado Fist. One time I actually hurt myself trying to copy Jin's Tornado Fist. Banged it right on the oven, I did. My signature move would be a Spirit Bow, by the way. Pretty much the same idea as the Spirit Gun, but a tad more elegant. This show is a great example of using revivals and resurrections in a way that doesn't feel cheap. They can resurrect people, but there's a bunch of hoops to jump through, or some kind of major drawback. And it usually symbolizes a turning point in the character arc. It's handled a lot better here than a lot of other places, in my opinion. Unfortunately, there are some minor inconsistencies, such as early on all energy being referred to as spirit energy, as opposed to having the distinction between spirit and demon energy, as well as one between Hiei's relationship to a family member. These are eventually corrected and are rather minor nitpicks though. As a kid, I always felt the ending felt a little rushed. As it turns out, the manga actually keeps going a bit after where the anime leaves off. I didn't know that because while I did read a few bits here and there, I could never get into the manga. It had a kinda scratchy style to it that I just didn't dig. Anyway, that kinda explains that problem, though looking at it now, it's not as bad. It's a wind down from the kind of intense fights the series had earlier on, but that's because it's about the characters finally resolving their issues. Their fights are coming to a close. That's actually really cool. And I know we already discussed music, but the theme song even fits this idea. I wanna smile and grow up a bit. As a kid, I thought it was weird the theme didn't ever change like a lot of other shows, but looking at it now, I get it. The opening theme is so relevant to the theme of personal growth. All the characters' experience change, from Yusuke changing from a delinquent who needs to be bribed into doing his job to someone who takes action of his own accord and stands up and fights for, well, pretty much the human race. And Hiei from a power-hungry loner to a loner who can also be a team player on occasion. Following from that theme of growing up is one of discovering one's purpose, which really comes into play in the last arc. Heck, I wish finding my purpose was this cool. I'd enter a tournament to figure it out. Guess you could say I'm dying to know. So that's some messy general thoughts. Finally, let's bring this case to a close with my final thoughts. Verdict. In a lot of ways, Yu Yu Hakusho is your typical shonen anime with lots of over-the-top fights and powering up to take down the big bad of the day, only for them to turn out to be chump change compared to the next guy. I'm not even someone who gets super into the action-y shonen stuff, but I still have a blast with it. Some of that is simple nostalgia, I'm sure, but there's more to it than that. Its central theme of maturing and growth is one that is still relevant to me today, and rewatching it all these years later, I found myself thinking about that so much more than the fights. Anime has come a long way in the past 20 plus years, as have I, yet still this show remains a fantastic piece, one I can still heartily recommend to any fan of the medium, new or old. So that's Yu Yu Hakusho. As always, it's fun for me to take a look at something that I grew up with and see just how far I've come since then. As always, thank you so much for watching and for indulging my little nostalgia trips. Until next time, this is Hoodie Angel Brandon, signing out. Bye-bye!